Hello, I'm Bill Monroe, and welcome to 2-Minute Talk Tips. This week's tip, schedule practice time in your calendar. You know, it's great to have a to-do list with all of your tasks, and it's great to have practice time on that list as well. Because as you know, I've talked a lot about how prep and practice are important to your success. In most offices, though, to-do list items often get trumped by calendar items, like meetings, appointments, project kickoffs, updates, all-hands meetings, etc. Even though you intend to find time to practice, it is on your to-do list after all, other things keep coming up and filling up your free time. And that's the problem with leaving your practice up to free time. So don't. Here's a secret about your work calendar that many folks don't realize. You can actually schedule meetings with yourself. Put your practice time into some open slots on your calendar, and if you don't have a private office, go ahead and book a conference room as well. This accomplishes a few things. First, it commits you to practicing at a specific time instead of just later. That makes it more likely that you'll do it. Second, it protects your practice time. Often before folks schedule a meeting, they'll go ahead and check prospective attendees' calendars to see who's going to be available when. And now, since you've already booked your time with yourself to practice your talk, they're less likely to try and schedule a meeting on top of that. Third, it helps you secure practice space because you reserved it. And this is especially important in an open plan office space, since standing up at your desk to conduct a presentation while others are doing other work is generally frowned upon. So for your next talk, don't just take the time to practice, schedule the time to practice. Stick around. And after the break, we'll talk about 3 myths for addressing nerves and 1 way to actually deal with them. I have a couple quick announcements before we get into today's topic. First, Nikki's Podcasts has added 2-Minute Talk Tips to its list of the top 6 inspiring podcasts for entrepreneurs. Thanks a lot for that, Nikki. You can check out the article and the 5 other podcasts over at 2minutetalktips.com/Nikki. That's Nikki. 2minutetalktips.com/Nikki. Second, this week, Libsyn featured my podcast over on their blog. You can check that out at 2minutetalktips.com/Rockin2. ROCKIN, the number 2. Welcome back. When I tell folks about the podcast or what I do and I talk about public speaking, a common response is, "Oh, I could never do that." And generally, I think most folks are underestimating themselves and what they can do. I imagine many of you listen because you're not comfortable speaking in front of a crowd and want to get better, and that's awesome. But you have to be careful because there is a lot of bad advice out there about how to deal with nerves around public speaking. And today, I'm going to talk about 3 bad pieces of advice, 3 myths about dealing with stage fright, and 1 thing that does actually work. The 3 bad pieces of advice that I hear way too often are, first, have a drink. Second, imagine the audience naked. And third, skip practice. So let's start with that first one. Have a drink. Alcohol is often considered a social lubricant and a great way to deal with nerves. They say it takes the edge off. Oftentimes, though, you actually do want to have an edge. It seems like it would make you more relaxed. And it can, but it makes you more relaxed by dulling your senses and skills. This can make it harder for you to assess just how well you're doing and how you can do better. There is also the fact that most speaking opportunities we have are in a work-related context, and drinking at work is often a frowned upon and sometimes fireable offense. Relying on alcohol to be successful in public speaking is generally going to be a poor solution. Of course, there may be other medical ways to deal with severe nerves. One speaking coach that I talked to recommended beta blockers for his speakers, which are often used to treat high blood pressure. The beta blockers, not the speakers. Anti-anxiety medications may also be appropriate in some circumstances. These options, though, should be considered only under the direction of a psychiatrist or a physician. Additionally, if you do opt for a solution like that, you want to make sure you do a trial run with this several days or weeks before you speak, so you know exactly how they will affect you and how your body and your mind will respond to these chemicals. And if the only way that you can speak is if you have a drink or two beforehand, you should probably talk to somebody about that. The next piece of bad advice that I hear a lot is to imagine the audience naked. Now, the idea behind it is to make the audience seem less intimidating. The idea is, we're all the same under our clothes. Okay, fine, whatever. In reality, if I walked into a conference room to teach a class or promote a program and everyone is naked, I'm not going to feel at ease. That is a serious power move right there, people. Now, instead of all these people looking at me, it's all these naked people looking at me. And probably one of the last things HR wants you doing is imagining your coworkers, bosses, and employees naked. And do your attendees really want to think about you picturing them naked? Now, let's put aside part of the nakedness for a moment. When you work to imagine your meeting attendees are naked, you are adding a lot to your cognitive load. You've got to spend brain cycles pulling together naked images of your coworkers from your general information and existing memories of naked bodies. That is a lot of work at a time you really ought to be focused more on giving a great talk. There's also a weird power humiliation dynamic at play here. Part of the naked advice stems from the goal of empowering the speaker by disempowering the audience. How could they be superior to you if they have no clothes? And that's what mentally stripping them does. And it's interesting how powerful clothes can be. In Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, Dobby is a house elf, a slave, until his owner gives him clothes. Then he becomes free. So let your audience be free to appreciate your message for the important one that it is. Let them keep their clothes. The last piece of bad advice that I want to talk about today is the advice to not practice. The theory is that if you're nervous and you practice, you'll make yourself more nervous because you focus on it and you reinforce your nervousness as a part of your talk. The other thing you hear is that people don't want to be over-rehearsed. Let's be clear, that will not happen. Being worried about being over-rehearsed is like not wearing a seatbelt in a car driving quickly through a rocky desert because you're worried about being trapped by the seatbelt if the car goes into the water. Sure, I suppose there could be a freak accident, but not really. Being more prepared than you think you need to be is the best way to deal with those nerves. It gives you an opportunity to get it right in advance. When you get up to speak, you want to know that you're ready and that you've given yourself the best opportunity for success. And practice is how you do that. Now, there are some speakers out there who can just wing it, and they do very well. Odds are they would do even better if they practiced, though. And if you're extremely nervous about speaking, you're probably not one of them. So do the work and do the prep. So when you get up and start speaking, the talking part and the slide part is easy. This is how you give your audience the best experience possible. And that brings me to the piece of advice that is actually effective. Remember, it's not about you. It's about the audience. Often when we get nervous, we're thinking things like, what if they laugh at me? Will they like me? Oh no, they'll know I'm a fraud as soon as I open my mouth. Or they're just waiting for me to fail so they can mock me. When your inner critic says things like that, and everybody's inner critic says things like that, say to yourself and to your critic, it's not about me. It's about the audience. It's about the message or the call to action that you want to share with them. It's about the reason that you are speaking in the first place. It's about the experience that you want to deliver to them. And you know what? They are rooting for you. Your audience wants you to succeed. Have you ever been to an event where you wanted the speaker to fail? Besides maybe a rival political event? Probably not. And your audience doesn't want you to fail either. So don't worry about that. It's not going to happen because it's not about you. To deal with nerves, you have to get out of your own head and get out of your own way. It's not about you. Focus on your message. Focus on your audience. Ignore the advice from people who tell you should go ahead and have a drink before your speech, or imagine the audience naked, or skip practice. It's nonsense. When nerves and self-doubt sneak up, remember, it's not about you. So that's it. It's a pretty short one this week. How do you deal with nerves when you're getting ready to speak? Go ahead and tell us about it in the comments for episode 58 over at 2minutetalktips.com/3myths. Be sure to schedule time on your calendar to practice your next talk. And, as always, don't get best. Get better. Thanks a lot, and I'll talk to you next week.
Two-Minute Talk Tips is a proud production of the Currently Speaking Podcast Network.